"You're late again, Mary!" The shout cut across the narrow diner counter, slicing through the cold night air. Mary kept her eyes down as she stacked plates still slick with grease. Her hands trembled, but not from the cold. Outside, she knew exactly where her daughters were, wrapped in thin blankets, trying to sleep inside the car that had become their shelter since the eviction. The manager stormed forward, slapping his clipboard on the counter. "And to top it off, your daughters are sleeping in the parking lot. It's disgraceful. Customers have been talking." His voice echoed, scraping at what was left of her dignity. Mary swallowed hard. There was no way to respond without making it worse. She pressed the rag harder against the plate, as if she could scrub away the humiliation. Then the diner door slammed open, a gust of icy wind rushing in with the tall figure of a man in a dark overcoat. Silence fell fast, like everyone could sense something had changed. He walked with purpose toward the counter, never taking his eyes off the manager. "What's going on here?" His deep voice made customers shift in their seats. The manager, clipboard still in hand, cleared his throat. "Just keeping things in order, sir. This employee, no one touches that car, and no one's getting fired," the man interrupted, pulling a leather wallet from his pocket. "I'm Sebastian Wolf, owner of this chain." His name spread among the employees like an electric current. Mary looked up for the first time, and for a moment forgot to breathe. That face, older, more serious, but unmistakable. The same face she had known back in school, years ago, when dreams and a future still seemed possible. Sebastian paused. His blue eyes narrowed when they landed on her. Recognition flickered like a painful memory. Mary tried to turn away, to hide behind the stack of plates, but he had already seen her. "You, meh." The word came out low, almost disbelieving. The manager shook his head, confused. "Mr. Wolf, I don't understand." "Then let me make it clear." Sebastian took the termination notice from the manager's hand and ripped it in front of everyone. "And you're going to pick up every piece of paper you've ever handed her, now." A few customers began whispering. Sebastian turned to them, voice firm. "Tonight's shift is on me. Everyone's meal is paid for. I apologize for the disturbance." The tension melted into murmurs of surprise. The manager, red-faced, lowered his head and shuffled off, grumbling. Sebastian walked up to Mary. She was still holding the plate as if it could shield her. "Your shift is over for tonight, paid in full," he said calmly. "No one is getting fired." She tried to protest. "I need this job." "You need dignity." Sebastian glanced around, then lowered his voice. "Come with me." Outside, the wind cut like a blade. The car was there, glazed with dew, the two girls curled up in the back seat. Clarice woke first, rubbing her eyes. "Mom?" Her voice was barely a whisper. Mary ran to the car, opened the door, and adjusted the blanket over her daughters. Sebastian stood nearby, watching the scene, his throat tight. June lifted her head and looked at the tall man beside her mother. "Who is he?" Mary didn't answer, but Sebastian crouched down, one knee on the wet asphalt. "My name is Sebastian. I went to school with your mom." His voice softened to a whisper. "And if you'll let me, you won't sleep here tonight." Clarice looked at her mom, unsure. June grabbed Mary's hand tightly. "I don't want to be a burden," Mary murmured, barely audible. Sebastian shook his head. "You're not a burden. This is the least I can do." For a moment, only the distant noise of the city filled the silence. The steady rhythm of New York traffic, far-off honks, sirens in the background. Life moved on, indifferent, but on that small stretch of pavement something shifted. Mary took a deep breath, running her fingers through her daughter's hair. "For now," she said, quietly but firmly. Sebastian nodded. He opened the back door of the car and held out his hand. "Then let's go." The girls stepped out slowly, wide-eyed at the man who seemed to have come from a different world. As they walked toward his vehicle, Mary glanced back at the diner. The lights still glowed, but they meant nothing now. The humiliation was behind her. Sebastian opened the door to a black SUV. Clarice and June climbed in first, eyes lighting up at the warm interior and soft leather seats. Mary hesitated. She looked at Sebastian, who simply said, "No one's going to yell at you again." She got in. The door shut. The engine purred gently, and the car glided down the lit-up avenue. Outside, neon signs flashed. Inside, 3 lives were beginning to change. Sebastian kept his eyes on the road, but his mind drifted to their school days, to the face that once made him smile, and the emptiness that followed. Now, in front of him, were 2 sleepy children and a woman broken by the world, but still standing. From the back seat, a small voice broke the silence. "Mr. Sebastian, are we going to have a bed tonight?" He answered without hesitation, "You'll have a bed, and so much more." Mary closed her eyes, a lump in her throat. For the first time in months, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she could breathe without fear. And on that cold New York night, dignity was restored in front of everyone. The elevator stopped with a dry click, and the doors opened to reveal the top floor of the building. The luxurious silence stood in stark contrast to the noise of the city pulsing below. "Come in," Sebastian said, extending his hand like someone inviting others into sacred ground. Clarice and June stepped forward first, their eyes wide at the expanse of glass, light, and marble. The penthouse opened up in floor-to-ceiling windows, revealing Manhattan like an endless sea of lights. "Wow," Clarice breathed, pressing her face against the glass. June ran to the wall, touching the gleaming surface as if she couldn't believe it was real. Mary stood frozen at the entrance, her worn backpack slung over one shoulder, her wrinkled clothes clashing with every immaculate detail around her. Her heart raced, not with excitement, but with discomfort. "You have a room down that hall," Sebastian said, pointing. "2, actually, 1 for each of them." The girls bolted down the light-colored hallway, flinging open the first door, a spacious room, clean beds, soft sheets that carried a faint lavender scent. They ran to the next bed, laughing like they'd stumbled into an amusement park. Mary stepped in slowly, her eyes filled with tears at the sight of her daughters bouncing on real mattresses. The recent memory of them curled up on the car's hard seat made it impossible to hold back the knot in her throat. Sebastian stayed at the door, not intruding on the moment. "Your room is next door," he said quietly, almost respectfully. "It has its own bathroom." Mary nodded, unable to say thank you just yet. In the open kitchen, the aroma of warm food was already in the air. Sebastian had discreetly contacted the service team, but made sure no one else was present. He wanted this night to belong to them alone. On the table, steaming bowls of soup, fresh bread, cheese. The girls ran back into the main room, climbing onto chairs too tall for their feet to touch the floor. "Mom, look!" June held up a silver spoon like it was treasure. Mary sat down slowly, still tense. Her sweaty hands rested in her lap before reaching for the napkin. Sebastian took the seat across from her. "Eat, it's hot." Steam rose from the soup, warming the girls' faces. Clarice took the first spoonful and let out a satisfied sigh. June copied her, giggling with her mouth full. Mary, however, hesitated before tasting it. The flavor was rich, comforting, but felt strange against the kind of hunger that had built over so many days. After dinner, Sebastian opened a cabinet and pulled out shopping bags. "There are clean pajamas in here," he said, handing them to the girls. "Go ahead and take a bath, then change." Their eyes lit up again. They dashed toward the bathroom, laughter echoing down the hallway. Mary remained standing, unmoving, watching. "You didn't have to do any of this," she said finally, her voice low, filled with both gratitude and caution. Sebastian leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Yes, I did. No one should sleep in a car, especially not kids." The silence that followed was thick. Memories of school hovered between them, unspoken but present. Mary looked away, biting her lower lip. "I don't want eternal charity," she said at last, steady despite the tremor in her voice. Sebastian tilted his head slightly. "It's not charity. It's respect." He straightened, his tone softer. "You'll stay here for now. We'll talk more tomorrow." Mary took a deep breath, feeling for the first time in a long while that someone understood her boundaries. She nodded quietly. The girls returned in their pajamas, their wet hair smelling of gentle soap. They ran to their mother, asking for goodnight kisses. Then they disappeared into their room, closing the door with a soft click. Mary stood looking at the closed door, her heart tight from seeing them so safe, so far from the cold. She turned to Sebastian, who was still there, unmoving, as if he too wasn't sure what to do next. He broke the silence. "Good night, Mary." She just nodded, her voice caught in her throat. She walked down the hall to her room. When she opened the door, she found a massive bed, clean clothes on a chair, folded towels. She closed the door behind her and finally let the tears fall, not from pain, but from a relief that felt almost too heavy to bear. Back in the living room, Sebastian remained alone in front of the windows, watching Manhattan shimmer under the night sky. The entire city seemed alive, but he had never felt more aware of what truly mattered. And in that quiet penthouse, respect for boundaries began to lay the foundation for trust. The metallic clink of silverware against porcelain broke the morning silence. Clarice and June giggled softly, enchanted by the abundance of pancakes, fresh fruit, and squeezed juice spread across the breakfast table. "Can I have another one?" Clarice raised her hand cautiously, like she was asking permission in a foreign kingdom. "Of course you can," Sebastian replied, already placing another pancake on her plate. June, her hair still damp from her bath, held her juice glass with both hands, eyes shining. "Mom, look! It has real strawberries." Mary remained seated, rigid. She clutched her cup like a shield, watching her daughters devour every bite with unrestrained joy. Her heart tightened between relief and shame. Sebastian noticed. "Aren't you going to eat?" he asked, looking directly at her. I already did," she replied, though the plate in front of her was still empty. The girls remained cheerful, swapping bites of food and little giggles. The contrast between their lightness and their mother's tension was stark. Sebastian leaned his elbows on the table and spoke plainly. "Mary, I want to hear your story from the beginning." Her hands trembled around the cup. Her gaze drifted to the massive window, showing Manhattan waking up. Taxis weaving through avenues, the city pulsing, indifferent. She took a deep breath. "There's not much to tell." Her voice came out low, barely a whisper. "I had a simple but stable life. My husband Daniel worked as an electrical maintenance technician. I worked restaurant shifts. We weren't rich, but we had peace, until cancer came." The words seemed to cut her mouth as they left. "It happened fast," she continued, pressing her fingers tightly together. "Suddenly, every cent went to appointments, medicine, tests. We sold what we could, then came the loans. When Daniel passed, the debts stayed, and with them, we lost the house." Clarice lowered her fork, her mouth full, silently watching her mother. June did the same. Mary swallowed hard and went on. "All that was left was the car, our last roof. I work shifts, waiting tables, trying to smile while the girls sleep in the parking lot. Every night I fear someone knocking on the glass, some danger I won't be able to stop." Her voice broke. "More than anything, the guilt of leaving them out there while I work." Sebastian listened in silence, eyes fixed on her, never interrupting. "I don't tell this to anyone," Mary finished, her lips trembling. "Because I know what people say, that I'm not enough, that I failed my daughters." The weight of her words filled the room. The girls shrank into their chairs, still too young to understand the full weight, but old enough to feel the heaviness in the air. Finally, Sebastian moved. He set his cup down with quiet firmness. "Mary, you didn't fail." His tone was direct, almost sharp. "You stood by your husband until the very end. You're fighting every day for your girls. This isn't about judgment. It's about survival." Mary looked up, surprised by the firmness and the absence of pity. "What happened to you could happen to anyone," Sebastian continued. "The system doesn't forgive. But I'm not here to point fingers. I'm here because I believe your daughters deserve more, and so do you." Clarice, in a timid gesture, reached out and touched her mother's hand. "Mom, we're okay now." Mary held her daughter's hand, swallowing back the tears threatening to fall. Sebastian took advantage of the silence and added, "I don't want you to carry this burden alone. What happened doesn't define who you are, or your daughter's future." Mary took a deep breath, trying to pull herself together. The memories of cold nights in the car, the judgmental stares at work, all of it threatened to crush her at once. But hearing those words, without judgment, sparked a small flame of relief. June, in her innocence, broke the heaviness. "So, does that mean we can stay here forever?" Mary gave a sad smile, running her hand through her daughter's hair. "No, sweetheart. Just for now." Sebastian leaned forward slightly. "As long as you need. No rush, no hidden conditions. I only ask one thing, trust me." Mary was silent for a few seconds, torn between pride and necessity. At last, she simply nodded. The rhythm at the table slowly returned. Clarice asked for more fruit, June for more juice. Mary watched her daughters eating like they hadn't in months. The weight of guilt was still there, but beside it, something new was beginning to grow. The possibility of breathing without having to justify herself every second. Sebastian didn't take his eyes off them, especially not Mary. He knew that from that morning on, it wouldn't just be about helping them survive. It would be about rebuilding. And at that breakfast table, between simple dishes and hard words, vulnerability opened doors that pride had kept closed for far too long. The automatic doors of the mall slid open with a gust of warm air, brushing away the cold still clinging to their coats. Clarice ran ahead, grabbing her sister's hand, eyes wide at the glowing storefronts. "Mom, look!" June pointed at a mannequin in a pink dress. "It looks like a princess." Mary clutched her purse to her chest, hesitant. "Girls, we're only getting what we need, okay?" "They do need it," Sebastian added, walking behind them with steady steps. "Clothes, school supplies, and maybe one or two treats." Mary turned her head, nearly reproachful. "Treats aren't a priority." "Sometimes they are," he replied, calm but firm. Inside the children's clothing store, the girls vanished among the racks of colorful hangers. Clarice appeared with a shiny yellow jacket, while June squeezed into a pair of glittery boots. "Can I try it on?" Clarice asked, already twirling in front of the mirror. Mary sighed, trying to hold back a smile. "One item each." "3 items," Sebastian corrected, raising the payment card. "No arguments." Mary crossed her arms. "I don't want them getting used to things I can't sustain." "This isn't about getting used to anything. It's about reminding them they're kids. And kids need to play, laugh, and feel normal." The words struck Mary unexpectedly. She swallowed hard and let the girls try on the clothes. Then came the notebooks, colored pencils, new backpacks. Clarice chose one covered in star patterns. June picked one bursting with music-themed stickers. Each choice seemed to give back a piece of the childhood the car had stolen. Carrying their bags, Sebastian led them to a small restaurant on the upper floor. The girls climbed into their seats, excited, flipping through the illustrated menu. "Let's get burgers," June said, her eyes gleaming. "With fries." Mary ran a tired hand over her face. "Maybe something lighter." "Today can be burgers," Sebastian replied, signaling the waiter. While the girls were distracted, Mary leaned toward him. "You don't understand. Every time I accept more, it feels like I'm losing a piece of myself." "You're gaining," he said. "The past is behind you. What matters is from here on out." Mary stayed silent, staring at her hands folded on the table. When the food arrived, Clarice and June dove into their plates with enthusiasm. Their laughter filled the space, muffling the weight of the adult conversation. After lunch, back in the car, Sebastian handed Mary a manila envelope. "What is this?" she asked, wary. "Courses, business management, entrepreneurship, basic administration." He kept his eyes on the road. "You've got talent, Mary. You don't need charity. You need tools." She opened the envelope, flipping through the printed pages. Dates, schedules, fees already paid. Her heart raced. "I didn't ask for this. And I'm not asking for permission," Sebastian replied. "I'm offering a path. The rest is up to you." Mary shut the envelope tightly, her chest heavy with conflicting emotions. Part of her wanted to toss it out, to shield herself from the feeling of dependence, but another part saw an opportunity she'd never be able to reach on her own. That night, back at the penthouse with the girls asleep in the next room, Mary opened the envelope again. She read every detail under the dim glow of the desk lamp. Her fingers brushed the course names, imagining what they could mean for the future. Her hands trembled as she finally pushed the papers aside. She leaned back in the chair, taking a deep breath. "It's not for you," she murmured to herself, voice barely audible. "It's for them." And in the girls' room, Clarice and June dreamed on soft mattresses, surrounded by simple toys, yet enough to spark imagination. Mary closed their door quietly and returned to her own room. She lay down, eyes fixed on the ceiling. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to believe that maybe there was a way back. And that night, among scattered shopping bags and papers on the table, she made the decision that would change everything, to accept the chance, not as charity, but as a weapon to take her life back. "You're hired." Sebastian's words were firm but unceremonious as he handed Mary a temporary badge bearing the Wolf Group logo. She held the badge with trembling hands, eyes wide. I don't know if I can do this." "You can," he replied, leaving no room for doubt. "You'll be a project assistant, flexible hours, so you can always be there for the girls." Her heart pounded like it might burst. This wasn't just a job. It was an invitation to prove she still had value. On her first morning, Mary walked into the mirrored building with uncertain steps. The lobby was grand, lit by glass chandeliers and bustling with people in suits walking briskly. She adjusted her coat, trying to shrink herself smaller than she already felt. A friendly receptionist pointed the way to the project floor. Mary walked through the corridors, carrying a plain folder that felt wildly out of place among the tablets and laptops everyone else held. "You must be the new assistant," said a cheerful young woman in glasses. "I'm Anna. I'll show you around." Mary thanked her in a quiet voice and followed her through the modern spaces, filled with digital screens and shared desks. The first few days were suffocating. Every email she had to reply to, every spreadsheet she opened, made her doubt whether she belonged there at all. At home, at night, she admitted to her daughters, "It feels like I'm pretending. Like any minute they'll figure out I don't know anything." Clarice, with the unexpected wisdom of her 10 years, answered, "But you're learning, Mum, and learning isn't pretending." Those words echoed a week later, during a team meeting when Mary listened carefully as the group discussed service flow at one of the units. Everyone spoke quickly, throwing out numbers and graphs, until, on impulse, she raised her hand. "Excuse me. Maybe it's too soon for me to say anything, but as a customer, I noticed that the front desk takes too long to confirm simple requests. If there were an initial check-in using tablets or digital forms, the wait time might drop. The room fell silent. Eyes turned to her, some surprised, others skeptical. Sebastian, seated at the head of the table, leaned forward. "Go on." Mary took a breath. "It's just an idea, but I think it could cut wait times and free up staff to focus on what really matters." A murmur ran through the room. Anna gave a subtle smile. One of the coordinators began taking notes. After the meeting, Sebastian approached her. "That was bold and smart." Mary lowered her eyes, blushing. "I didn't mean to overstep. Overstepping is speaking without adding anything. You offered a solution. That's different." In the days that followed, her idea was quietly tested on a small scale. To many people's surprise, it worked. Mary, still unsure of herself, began to receive more respectful looks. But not everyone welcomed her presence. The manager from the diner, the same one who had humiliated her weeks before, still lingered in the background, bitter from having been publicly exposed. He started spreading rumors. One afternoon, Mary received a photo on her phone. It showed Sebastian next to a polished consultant woman at a business dinner. The caption, sent from the manager's number, read, "He's just using you. That's his real life." The ground vanished beneath her. Old insecurities returned like a punch to the gut. That night, Mary could barely look at Sebastian during dinner at the penthouse. He noticed. "What's wrong?" he asked bluntly. She hesitated, then showed him the photo on her phone. "Is this it? Are you hiding something from me?" Sebastian took the phone, studied the image calmly, and handed it back. "Come with me." He led her to his private office, opened his laptop, pulled up contracts, emails, calendars, showed her everything with a kind of transparent coldness. "She's our expansion consultant, work-related, all public. I have nothing to hide." Mary scanned the documents, the clear proof in front of her. Her heart was still heavy, but reason left no room for doubt. "You could have lied to me," she murmured, "but I didn't. I'd rather you see the truth for yourself." She took a deep breath, her shoulders relaxing for the first time since she'd received that message. "Then, I believe you." Sebastian closed the laptop and stepped closer. "Don't believe me because of what I say. Believe the facts. Always." Mary nodded. For the first time, she felt she could trust without being afraid of falling. That night, before bed, she opened the simple notebook where she jotted down reminders. She wrote just one word: trust. And she knew that would be the hardest test, but also the most freeing. The phone rang on the glass conference table, cutting through Sebastian's conversation with two directors. He answered immediately, his expression growing increasingly hard as he listened. "Understood. I want the full report by the end of the day." He hung up without ceremony. The directors exchanged tense glances. Sebastian closed the folder in front of him and said, "We found out who was spreading the rumors. The diner manager." Hours later, in a private office, the man was called in. He entered already wary, sweating beneath a crooked tie. "What's going on, Mr. Wolf?" he asked, trying to sound calm. Sebastian didn't raise his voice, but the coldness in his tone sliced through the air. "An internal investigation confirmed it was you. You sent photos, distorted information, and tried to damage Mary's reputation." The manager stammered, reaching for excuses, but the evidence was right there on the desk. Message logs, witness statements from co-workers, copies of emails. "Your conduct is unacceptable." Sebastian stood, his imposing height dominating the room. "You're fired. Security will escort you out." The man tried to protest, but two guards were already at the door. Within minutes, only silence remained. At the end of the day, Sebastian returned to the penthouse. He found Mary on the couch, helping June finish a simple homework assignment. Clarice was nearby, sketching in her notebook. "I need to talk to you," he said, his voice softer. Mary sensed the weight in his tone. She told the girls to brush their teeth before bed. Once they were alone, she faced Sebastian with a knot in her stomach. "We found out where the rumors came from." He stepped closer, stopping in front of her. "It was the diner manager. He's been let go." Mary took a deep breath, closing her eyes for a moment. I need to apologize." "You don't owe me an apology," Sebastian replied firmly. "Your fears are valid." She opened her eyes, surprised. "I doubted you. You've been betrayed by life too many times. Distrust is natural." He sat beside her, without intruding on her space. "What matters is that now you know you can trust the facts." Mary swallowed hard, moved by the understanding she hadn't expected. A few days later, she found the courage to take the girls to a special place, a small memorial where her husband's name was engraved on a simple plaque, alongside others lost to the same illness. Clarice held flowers in one hand, June carried a drawing notebook. Mary walked between them, heart tight. "This is Daddy," she said, kneeling before the plaque. Her fingers traced the name Daniel Collins, as if caressing a memory. The girls laid down the flowers and drawings. Clarice cried quietly, while June leaned into her mother. Mary closed her eyes. "We made it, Daniel. We're safe." Her voice broke, but she continued, "I promise I'll take care of them the way you wanted me to." Sebastian stood a few steps back, keeping a respectful distance. He simply watched in silence. The farewell was theirs, not his. Back at the penthouse, Mary opened the gold notebook she kept hidden in her bedroom drawer. With a steady pen, she wrote, "Stable home, girls' education, full management." She closed the notebook and smiled faintly, like someone finally taking back the wheel of their life. At work, her posture changed. Instead of shrinking in meetings, she raised her voice when she had ideas. She proposed a mini-project to improve one of the company's units. She organized a team, mapped out the phases, tracked the results. When the final presentation came, the report showed clear numbers, reduced costs, increased customer satisfaction. The team's surprise was unmistakable. "Excellent work," one of the coordinators said sincerely. Mary thanked him with a modest nod, but inside, she felt something new: pride. That week, coming home, she found her daughters laughing on the couch, excitedly sharing stories about new friends at school. She watched them through teary eyes, realizing they weren't the only ones blooming. She was too, and as she closed her bedroom door that night, she knew the painful cycles were finally ending. The grief, the shame, the fear, they were being left behind. Now, the wheel of her story was back in her hands. "Mary, it's your turn." The voice of the director of operations echoed through the conference room, calling her to the front. Her heart raced, but her feet moved before her mind could pull back. Mary held the project materials with steady hands as she walked toward the projection screen. Sebastian, seated among the executives, kept his eyes on her, silent but attentive. The room was full. Directors, managers, and consultants waited, some with looks of expectation, others with skepticism. Mary took a deep breath and began, "The proposal is simple. Optimize initial customer service through a digital triage system." Her voice was clear without a single stammer. "The goal is to reduce wait times, free up staff for more complex tasks, and increase customer satisfaction." The slides displayed data from pilot tests conducted at one of the units. Charts showed significant drops in wait times and improvements in customer feedback. One of the directors raised a hand. "And what's the implementation cost?" Mary replied without hesitation. "Low compared to the return. The investment pays for itself in under 6 months." A murmur moved through the room. The director of operations, previously neutral, leaned forward. "And who ran these tests?" "I did, along with the selected units team," Mary answered. "It's not just a theoretical solution. We've already proven it works." Sebastian watched every detail but didn't interfere. This was her win. When she finished, Mary closed the presentation and waited in silence, her heart still pounding. For a moment, the room remained quiet. Then one of the executives started clapping. Others joined in. The applause grew until it filled the room. "Approved," declared the director of operations. "Let's roll out the pilot on a larger scale." Mary could hardly believe it. A quiet smile escaped her, and she bowed her head in thanks. As she left the room, colleagues approached to congratulate her. "Excellent work, Mary," one said. "You really impressed us." Sebastian simply watched, letting her receive all the credit. Later that same night, back at the penthouse, the atmosphere was entirely different. No executives or reports, just a simple dinner table. Clarice and June were already in their pajamas, playing in the other room. Sebastian poured wine into 2 glasses and set one in front of her. "Today was a milestone," he said, raising his glass. "To your courage." Mary blushed, her smile still shy. "I couldn't have done it without the opportunity." "Opportunity without effort means nothing. You made it happen." Dinner was light, with the girls occasionally bursting into laughter and running in with requests for dessert. After the main course, Sebastian leaned back in his chair, watching Mary with an expression he didn't use in business. "I have to admit something," he began, his voice lower. "I used to be cold. The business world taught me to stay distant, calculating. But you," he glanced toward the girls' room, "you all taught me something else." Mary looked down, feeling the weight of his words. "We were just trying to survive. And in the process, you showed me what I didn't realize I was missing." Silence settled for a moment. Then Sebastian leaned slightly forward. "I don't just want to be with you, Mary. I want to be with all of you, with Clarice and June, too." Her eyes widened in surprise. "Are you asking me?" "For a commitment," he said, carefully but firmly. "Not something rushed, not a fairy tale. A real path, together, step by step." Mary took a deep breath, her heart racing. She thought about the girls, the journey from the cold car to this dinner table. She thought about the risks, but also the transparency he had shown. "Slowly," she replied, her voice steady despite the emotion. "If it's meant to be, it will be, with patience." Sebastian nodded, a quiet relief crossing his face. He reached his hand across the table. Mary hesitated for just a second before placing hers over his. In the next room, Clarice and June laughed, unaware of the quiet moment unfolding nearby. Sebastian gently squeezed her hand. Mary lifted her gaze and found his, steady, sincere. And so, without rush or fanfare, just hands joined beneath the city lights, they sealed the beginning of a commitment. Outside, Manhattan sparkled like an endless sea of possibilities. Inside, there were simply 2 adults rebuilding and 2 children who now factored into every decision. Patient love, respecting the process, including those who mattered. And that night, the penthouse stopped being just a shelter. It became the first space of a true home. The electronic gate opened with a metallic whir, revealing Sebastian's SUV pulling into the penthouse's underground garage. Mary stepped out first, holding shopping bags, while Clarice and June ran excitedly toward the elevator, each carrying a small, colorful backpack. "Slow down, girls," Mary called, trying to rein in their energy. They obeyed, giggling, and soon the family was riding up to the top floor. When the elevator doors opened, the temporary home no longer felt like just a shelter. The girls' drawings were discreetly taped to the walls, toys filled the corners, and books were stacked on the coffee table. Mary placed the bags in the kitchen and took a deep breath. It's not their dream home yet, but it's where we're safe. The words weren't spoken with regret, but with conviction. Sebastian stepped closer, resting a steady hand on her shoulder. "And as long as we're here, it's home. The next step will come at the right time." Mary nodded, putting away the groceries with automatic movements. What once seemed like unreachable luxury had become part of a routine. But she didn't let it blind her. She saved every penny she could, preparing to build something lasting. A few days later, in the auditorium of one of the Wolf Group's properties, Sebastian stepped onto the stage before an audience of employees and guests. The lights highlighted his poised figure, but there was something different in his eyes. "Today, I'm not speaking as a businessman," he began, his deep voice resonating. "I'm speaking as someone who's learned that money doesn't buy everything. In memory of Daniel Collins, Mary's husband, we're launching a scholarship program for families who've suffered similar losses. Let this be more than assistance. Let it be respect for everyone's past." The room erupted in applause. Mary, seated in the front row, brought a hand to her mouth, overwhelmed. It wasn't just a gesture for her. It was for the man who still lived in her daughter's memories. Clarice and June clapped proudly beside her. As time passed, the girls blossomed into parts of themselves that had long been waiting to surface. Clarice, who always loved scribbling stories in her notebook, was accepted into a children's writing club. Her stories were read aloud, and after each session, she came home with sparkling eyes and new ideas. June, on the other hand, showed a gift for singing. She joined a children's choir, and at the first open rehearsal, her crystal-clear voice stood out. Mary sat in the audience during each performance, heart full of pride and tears held back. Meanwhile, at Wolf Group, Mary continued to grow professionally. The mini project she'd led became the blueprint for broader improvements. Before long, she was promoted to process coordinator. At an executive meeting, Sebastian made a point of introducing her. "This is what genuine leadership looks like," he said naturally. "Someone who knows hardship, but never stops seeing solutions." Mary heard the applause around her, but her eyes met only his, filled with quiet recognition. Back at the penthouse that night, the girls were asleep when Sebastian and Mary stood by the window, looking out over the glowing city. "Have you noticed?" he said, his voice softer than usual. "It's not about charity anymore, it's about legacy." Mary smiled, folding her arms across her chest. "I never thought I'd be here, being introduced like that." "Oh, and I never thought I'd be learning so much by your side," he replied, stepping closer. She said nothing, but rested her head on his shoulder. They stood in silence, simply watching the city pulse below them. Days later, Mary returned to her goal notebook. The cover was worn now, but beside the old notes, new words appeared: legacy, trust, future. The epilogue came on an ordinary night. The girls were in the living room, working on a puzzle. Sebastian sat nearby, quietly reading reports. Mary picked up her phone and recorded a short video to send to a distant friend. Sometimes a new beginning shows up when you least expect it. She glanced at her daughters, laughing on the floor. "The question is, what would you do for someone who once ignored you?" She ended the recording, tucked the phone away, and sat back down on the couch. Sebastian looked up from his report and watched her in silence, as if the answer was already there in every detail of that moment. And just like that, without long speeches or exaggerated promises, dignity, love, and hope stopped being just words. They became structure, from quiet care to public impact, from an improvised shelter to a whole life rebuilt.
Hear what it meant to you. Remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons. This is really important for the channel. Really important. And if you're ready for another story of love and hope, click the first card or the second one to watch the full playlist. See you there.